Well, hello everybody. I thought it was time for a decently lit broadcast because when I use the OBR, when I want to show you some tweets or some charts, it's always this really awful lighting and I look absolutely horrendous because it's got light coming in from this side, my hair looks orange, no light this side, so it's really crazy. So this is a lot better. But just a little bit of a chat on a couple of things. Now, one of the trends, I've been discussing the trends for the year ahead, and a big trend is heightened conflict, and we see that now happening with the American and British attacks on the Houthi rebels who are creating this blockade in the Red Sea. Now there's been talk of, will these other Arab or Muslim countries step up, because these are Iran-backed Houthi rebels. We have China making rumblings about sending ships into the Red Sea area to kind of bolster support for the Houthis and sort of be a counter to the US and American. But what will actually happen? Because in reality, we very rarely see these other states stepping up. They saw what happened to Saddam and to Gaddafi. They know that you end up betting if you stand up to the American regime, particularly at the moment. They've never really been in a position of strength enough or weren't able to rely on China enough to do it. So China never really gets that involved. There's always a talk of, will China, send the ship? I don't know if it'll ever materialize. China is still on the sidelines. We're still actually in the situation where we have this bipolar USA and NATO versus Russia. Russia still is the only counterbalance. When push comes to shove, they are creating some sort of pushback, like they weren't prepared to tolerate Iran. They went ahead and annexed Crimea. I know there was a referendum. I believe that Crimea was always part of the Russia, so that isn't really such a big deal. It's like, Russia getting involved in Northern Ireland. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. I mean, people in Crimea are presumably better off in a stronger Russian economy, and without all the terrible corruption and being a backwater like Ukraine. But Russia are willing to take it on. I sometimes wonder as well, when we hear so much of all the depletion in terms of arms stocks and weapons, why the West are pursuing this. I notice there's an escalation in everything since David Cameron was made foreign minister. I feel that he is one of the most nefarious influences and pushers for conflict out there. And so I do think, and now we see the UK being the first one to step up and sell long-range missiles to Ukraine, which is a marked escalation, because if Ukraine can strike targets in Russia with British-made weapons, that sort of ups the ante. So I don't know where this is all going, but I do think in terms of Europe. In terms of Middle East, I see an awful lot more conflict. Now, we did hear the Swedish foreign minister saying Swedes must get ready for war because, of course, now they're part of NATO. Some of their forces might be conscripted. We'll see where that goes. But I definitely see more tensions. We know Syria are one of the nations that are also willing to stand up and go against the kind of global elite forces. So we'll see exactly what goes on with the tensions. But definitely, I said this year, Middle East tensions rising, particularly Syria with Iran, and that all seems to be happening right now. I'm not so keen on this whole Taiwan scenario with China, but we'll watch that as it goes on. Now, one of the things that I've noticed just totally dropped off as a subject when you go to Twitter and the alternate media is the 15-minute cities. Last year, lots of pictures of roadblocks, barriers going up, this whole talk about the 15-minute initiative, 20-minute cities, that whole thing. It's kind of really died down as a topic, and yet I feel it's happening in the background. Now, I recommended you this channel, Wandering Turnip, and I said how he'd gone around London showing all the vacancies. He did an excellent one on Slough. Slough, for those who don't know, is to the west of London. It's just beyond Windsor, where Windsor Castle and Heathrow Airport is to the west, and you go beyond that, there's Windsor, Slough, Maidenhead. It's not terribly far, so it's very much a commuter area for London. But it is desperately bad. The high street is decimated. Very little open. However, what he was showing, which was quite interesting, is there's the world's biggest Tesco. So you've got really everything you want within the Tesco, because you've got your pharmacy in there, you've even got like opticians, a Costa Coffee, they keep closed, they keep pretty much everything at Tesco, and it's sucking the energy out of the high street. So what he showed was when you take the enormous Tesco and the enormous Sainsbury's, it's worth far more in terms of square area than what was in the dying high street. But along with high street dying, you've got all the pubs, the restaurant trades that are dying out as well, which is very sad because you don't have that kind of level of community, entertainment, or pleasure in just these very stark shopping, not shopping malls, they're not shopping malls, just like Tesco and Sainsbury's, these supermarkets. Although they keep everything you want, there's no real atmosphere, no real pleasure about being in there. And you get one like mingy Costa coffee for everyone to go to, which is really not catering for people on a wide scale. Now, I know even my local sort of out-of-town retailer, Marks and Spencer used to have 3 cafes. There used to be a Starbucks, a Costa. There was another Starbucks as well across the way where there were things like Monsoon, Boots, Next, and whatever. Now they're down to just the one Marks and Spencer cafe because they've like closed the other cafes, and a small Costa within the Next. It's really not enough eating space. And a friend of mine who works there says that although they do have some outlets, it's only available takeaway, nowhere to sit down. So you see this trend where everything's really takeaway. They're not encouraging people to linger. It's like, get into what is now the town centre, which is just one big supermarket or maybe a choice of 2, Tesco and Sainsbury's, and get home. And maybe that's for your weekly shop, and then you would collect your local, anything else you needed, maybe on a very, very local basis at the corner shop. So because of the death of the high street, far fewer closed jewelry shops, restaurants, pubs, all those sort of things diminishing, and everything you need being shifted into these big, sort of very boring superstores, you see that 15-minute thing is taking place in a slightly different way to what you might imagine, but there still is a big shift. Interesting fact he had about Slough is it's where a guy called Herschel, I can't remember his first name, his surname was Herschel, he discovered the planet Uranus. So he was from Slough, and he said the game of snooker, or the concept of the game of snooker, was invented in Slough, and is also the place where the wheelie bin was invented. I wonder if Elon Musk was behind that, because, you know, that seems about his level to me, the invention of the wheelie bin. Now, that I wouldn't diss him for. He's probably capable of it. I was going to say to Elon Musk, on Twitter, just after New Year, he said, tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life. And I thought, can you believe it? A man who is, like, probably, if you to believe what they say about him, one of the most productive human beings that's ever lived, running 6 of the most high-tech, high-powered companies that there ever were, on the cutting edge of everything, inventing this, inventing that, but he finds time to tweet one of the most hackneyed old cliches out there. So just be grateful that he took time out of his extremely busy day to think of you and bring you that interesting cliche. Yeah, whatever. Thanks, Elon. So, otherwise, what else was that? Do you guys watch Katie Hopkins on a Friday night? I just don't get it. You know, she's not talking about her crotch, she's talking about her tiny, tiny boobs. I've heard so much about these tiny boobs, I really don't need to hear any more about them. Or she's talking about her shows, giving a long list of all the places she might be performing. And look, I like a little bit of humor when it's got politics involved and current affairs that we can always relate to. But I mean, there's only so many much you can hear about someone's tiny boobs when, like, it's the apocalypse potentially. Is it really interesting to be worrying about tiny boobs? It isn't playing into female stereotypes that really aren't important at this level of the game. Do I need to hear that she doesn't wear underwear or pants are riding up? I mean, there's just far too much of that. I'm surprised. And you know what really annoys me about her broadcast is she'll say, oh, I'm going to talk about something that sounds like vaguely interesting, something political. I'm going to talk about Carol Vorderman just now. Oh, don't let me forget to say about Carol Vorderman. And then she like never gets to it. So you'll be teased with something that might be vaguely relevant or interesting or a little bit politically juicy, and then she just goes, oh God, I can't believe I've only got like 1 minute left, and it's always 1 minute, and then she really has to go. But you know, she does us such a favor. Oh, then we've always got to hear about the wine string, so the wine glass she's drinking out of, and these really meaningless topics have to be dragged out for an inordinate length of time. Now, I don't want to criticize if she's uplifting people and people find that funny and that, but for me it's got so kind of desperate and repetitive. I know she thinks she's a bit of a Joan Rivers, but she's really not pulling it off, and she needs to rework her material desperately. Not trying to say I'm funny or anything, but she needs to work a little bit more on it. Anyway, guys, hope you have a lovely weekend and hope you enjoyed this little chit chat today. Take care.